Hello, my name is Kieran Lang, and today I will be talking about how climate change as an extinction factor affects Staghorn coral, Hawksbill sea turtles, and polar bears. First off, let's talk about climate change as a whole, so we can better understand it going into what I'm talking about. First off, greenhouse gases drive climate change a lot. What greenhouse gases are is carbon, methane, and water vapor. And how greenhouse gases work is they get trapped in the atmosphere and heat up the earth because they can't escape the atmosphere. And there are regulations that happen naturally, like carbon sinks, which the ocean is a big carbon sink. And because of this, it contributes to the global climate. The ocean is capable and absorbing 30% of all carbon right now, but the ocean does have its limits as a carbon sink, and we're reaching them, if not have reached them. But what that means is the carbon sink of the ocean is no longer absorbing carbon and making it 10 times worse because it's not absorbing it, so there will be more carbon in the atmosphere. First off, I will be talking about coral, most specifically staghorn coral, as I mentioned before. Staghorn coral is critically endangered and is one of the corals that is really affected by climate change because it is branching coral, so it has multiple points where the organisms can leave and not come back. But first, we're going to talk about coral's overarching feature, and then we're going to drive more into the specifics. So, coral is a very, very diverse ecosystem. It is an ecosystem. It also is an organism that, so it can be confusing when I say this, but I'm talking about the ecosystem now because that drives so much of what humans rely on and what other animals rely on as well. So coral reefs contain 25% of all life in the ocean, yet only cover 1% of surface in the ocean. That's insane. Coral have animals polyps called zooxanthellae on them. The polyps zooxanthellae have a symbiotic relationship with algae. So algae is actually in each polyp, causing photosynthesis to happen during the day. At night, it's a little different. At night, polyps will open and tentacles will come out and it will filter feed in the ocean in the water column, much like anemones do, eating plankton and stuff like that. But during the day, it photosynthesizes with its algae. The algae, the coral, in whole, the zooxanthellae part, the polyp, is very, very sensitive though. Just 1 degree Celsius difference in the water column over a sustained period of time can affect the stress levels of the polyps on the coral, causing the algae to be expelled from the coral. Once the algae is expelled, it can no longer photosynthesize, so it can no longer feed itself during the day. It has to wait until nighttime. This is very, very stressful on the polyps. So the polyps will leave the coral, and we will leave the calcium carbonate shell or skeleton behind to the harshness of the wave action and isn't as pretty and will drive tourism down when talk about it later. Another factor in this, it's kind of hard not to talk about this without when talking about climate change, is ocean acidification because it's caused by the same things, greenhouse gases. When carbon gets into the ocean, it acidifies the ocean, causing the calcium carbonate structure to dissolve and protect the shore from wave action less. So people do rely on coral reefs every day, whether they know it or not. It drives tourism, like I mentioned before. It provides a ton of food, and it provides coastal protection, like I mentioned before. So how it affects tourism is people want to see these corals because they are beautiful. They want to see the reefs in all its glory. So staghorn coral is a big part because it's a very, very pretty coral because it is branching, so it does have more options for disease and more options for the zooxanthellae to leave. The coral reef in general provides a ton of food for coastal ecosystems as well as for coastal populations of people, as well as us in Oklahoma, because that's where most of the seafood comes from. Like I mentioned before, with coastal protection, it is a barrier from the big waves to the shore. So the big waves would come, hit the coral, it would dissipate before it hits land, and it won't it won't be as big, as much damage as if there were no coral there. If coral does go extinct because of this, you will most likely see bigger waves and hitting the shoreline and more destruction based on those waves. How we can protect coral? Number one, anybody can do it because of citizen science. What citizen science is, if you see a coral bleaching, you can either see it with your eyes, you can take a transect line, you can take a quadrat, which is just transect is just a long line that you lay down the floor to see how much percent of coral is dying dead or is alive. And you can give that to the government, and so they know where to focus their attention on. Another option is replanting coral into more cooler areas, even going on that even further. People are working on this right now. Is they're trying to find a coral that thrives more in hotter temperatures, and trying to have the Staghorn coral and that coral mate and make a new type of Staghorn coral that's more resilient to heat and can still have them in the future. We still have to worry about it, but we will still have them for a longer period of time. Well, we figure out the climate change situation. Now we're going to talk about hawksbill sea turtles as it relates to climate change. Hawksbill sea turtles are critically endangered species. Climate change is really affecting hawksbill sea turtles nests, and as well as other sea turtle nests, but mainly hawksbill sea turtle nests. Um, how it's affecting the nests is the eggs have an incubation range of 25 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius at the high end. What determines the sex is the temperature of the sand that they're buried in. So how a normal clutch looks like is it's a basically a cavity in the sand. The turtle would dig a cavity in the sand, right? And lay its eggs. The warmer temperature is up, so if the temperature is 31 degrees Celsius or higher, it will most likely be female. And if the temperature is 27 degrees Celsius or lower, it will most likely be male. And in between that, it varies. Also, it affects where they can lay the eggs. Now, turtles have this really cool feature called natal homing. What natal homing is it allows the turtle to come back to the very same beach that it was born in order to lay its eggs, because from evolutionary perspective, it's safe, right? But with these rising sand temperatures, it will still lay its eggs there, but it's not very beneficial for the species because you would get more females than males, a higher percentage of females than males. This also affects natal homing affects what shifting currents, which can be affected by climate change. Um, Change two, it can shift the wave currents into different beaches. So it could go to a different beach if the current shift, but it's very if unlikely to happen in the near future. Wave conditions can also affect it. So if big waves are happening, the turtle will most likely not come to that beach to lay its eggs. And it just won't have a clutch that that year. So it does depend on how fast it's happening, because how fast it's actually mature, because that will in turn have an effect on if the climate changes enough in that time. So for Hawksbill sea turtles, it takes 7 years to sexually mature, which is on the low end. So it would take a few generations for this to fully kick in, for there to be only females. But it's looking like we're going that direction. These turtles will have to either adjust to the climate in order to nest where it's safe to nest, where they can get a more even balance of males and females, or either not repopulate if the wave action's crazy, or find a different beach to lay its eggs on, which can happen, does happen, but it's not very likely. So I interviewed my friend Anna Ortega. I was able to ask her about natal homing and natal homing in turtles, and how, and if it skips a generation, if the turtle decides to go to another beach, will the turtle go to that beach or the beach that his grandparents were at? And she said that it will most likely go to the beach that it was born. So if they do switch beaches to a more sustainable beach, more cooler beach, then the population could bounce back. But yeah, another thing that affects hawksbill sea turtle specifically, like a lot, is its food source. Climate change is affecting sponges because of the calcium carbonate base, and sponges rely on the same thing that corals rely on, which is has the polyps. So is the polyps on it, and the polyps are leaving, so the hawksbill sea turtles have very little option for food. Very little option for food. They will have to rely on other sources of food. They'll have to switch their diets if global warming continues to happen. They also eat jellyfish, so they can switch to more jellyfish based diet. It's just the problem is that sponges are the main source of food. So to switch to all jellyfish diet would be a major change. They can do it, but yeah. Some solutions that we are seeing right now and that could work, potential to work in Hawksbill sea turtles. We can artificially cool the sand temperature down by watering down the nests. We are doing this right now and it seems to be working, but it just takes a while. So you go by every nest, water them down, put water on each nest. Now, in my interview with Anna, she's studying leatherback sea turtles, specifically the Pacific leatherback sea turtle, but she works very closely with hawksbills as well. And she explained to me this idea of a split clutch. Um, I don't explain it well, unfortunately, um, but she does, and so I'm going to play a snippet from the interview that I had with her last month. So enjoy Anna for the next 30 seconds. So I'm gonna have Anna explain her background a little bit, and then go into the split clutch.
Yeah. So I started loving sea turtles and conservation and science in high school. And I went to a few summer camps where I learned that I really like research and especially marine science research. And
Mhm.
then I got a job working at Sea Trek BVI, as you know.
Yeah.
And I got to teach marine science and go on hikes and go on dives and go on snorkels and do turtle tagging, which was amazing and very magical and very cool to be involved in something that hands on.
Mhm.
So I really loved getting to, work with the data myself and go catch the turtles and learn about them. And then that became kind of like paved the way for my undergrad. And then I went and did a master's in biological science at the University of Western Australia. And it happened during COVID. So I had a computer project, but that's when I started working in this conservation planning space. So that's when I learned that we can use technology to kind of test out different conservation scenarios and do population modeling. So I replicate a population in the wild on my computer. And then if I play with it on the computer, I can find which conservation actions make the best impact for the population survival. And now I'm doing a PhD on the same thing, working on Pacific leatherback sea turtles. There's also some studies, they haven't done it with hawksbills yet, I don't think, but for loggerheads and flatbacks, there have
Mm-hmm.
been some studies that say if we're sitting right there when a turtle's laying a nest
Mm-hmm.
and we wait till she's, done laying all of her eggs, and then we pick up the turtle and we move her off the nest,
Mm-hmm.
the turtles are like in a trance. So they don't even care. They're just, like a robot. They're just going through the motions. So
Mm-hmm.
if you move the turtle and then you take the eggs and you look at the shape of the nest and then build a replica nest right next to it, you can put half the eggs in one. So it's called a split clutch. So if you put half the eggs in one nest, half the eggs in the other,
Mm-hmm.
because as the turtles are growing, they're kind of generating heat and giving off heat to each other. They're actually making it worse, essentially. Um, they're making the nest hotter than they would be. And so if you split the clutches, there's less of that kind of body heat. And so
Mm-hmm.
the nest could be cooler. So I haven't dug into a ton of data, but it looks like it's worked for loggerheads. And there's a study currently underway on flatbacks as well.
Mm-hmm. So next we are going to be talking about polar bears. Polar bears are vulnerable species. They rely on the ice for breeding, hunting, and traveling between the lands. The ice is melting sooner and is forming later in the season. So the season that they have to hunt is shrinking fast. Um, as you can imagine, spring is a very, very important time for these polar bears because it is their hunting season. They do also breed in spring, so that's when the ice starts to form because it's forming later in the year. The hunting season is shortened by quite a bit. Another problem is the thinning ice sheet that's happening because of global warming. Another problem that polar bears are facing right now is warming climate. The warming climate could potentially bring pathogens that would not normally be there. So that could affect the polar bear health and causing more polar bears to get these diseases that weren't there before and not have the immune system to fight it and cause them to die faster. Some solutions that they're working on in for polar bears is to maintain their ecosystem as much as they can. They're doing this by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as so the Arctic is very, very could have a lot of resources like oil, and if we do add drills there, it could speed up the process of thinning the ice sheet, so polar bears won't be able to go on ice at all, or in a much, much shorter period of time. Thank you, thank you everyone for listening to this, and have a great day.